What's up, everybody? Welcome to this DraftKings baby we call the Sweats, an 11 a.m. to noon Eastern time tradition, Monday through Friday, unlike any other. I am Emerson Lotzia, coming up the best bets to chase around the diamond and the NFL. But first, here is how you can win $1 million. Once again, DraftKings is looking to crown a new millionaire in Week 3. I know, I can hear the analysts. Everyone is excited. For a $20 entry fee, you can take part in the NFL $4.5 million fantasy football millionaire contest. Of course, that comes with a top prize of a fat millie, but also a seat in our Tournament of Champions contest in January that will offer another shot at $1 million. So check out the contest now in the DK lobby. Let's go ahead and check out our panel this morning, NFL panel. DraftKings contributors Steve Buchanan and Jeff Ulrich. We are price checking salaries, my dude. Share with us your favorite DFS plays at the following positions on this Sunday slate. Let's go ahead and start at quarterback. Steven.
Yeah, Russell Wilson is by far my favorite play on this slate going against the Minnesota Vikings. We just saw what Kyler Murray did to this secondary. If you didn't see what he did to the secondary, I'll try to give you a visual. He absolutely just picked the secondary apart, threw for 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, rushed for another one, early MVP candidate, no problem. Now they're going to have to go up against Russell Wilson, who really isn't getting a lot of attention so far this season because we're getting all these good performances from other quarterbacks. But this is somebody that already is averaging just under 300 passing yards, 71.1% completion percentage, 26.7 DraftKings fantasy points, and the Vikings don't really offer much of a pass rush, so that means Russell Wilson's going to have all day to throw the ball. And when he's been working with a clean pocket so far this season, 11.8 yards per attempt, 81.6% completion percentage, and 3 of his 6 touchdowns. He, just like Kyler Murray did last week, should be able to pick apart this secondary in what is expected to be one of the highest scoring games on this slate.
Damn, Jeff. Steve is so high on Russell Wilson. Who are you high on?
I mean, I love Russell Wilson, so I'm completely fine with that call. Look, realistically, I think we have about 5 or 6 quarterbacks this week who just look like they're going to be off the charts. It's going to be hard to pick between these guys. I'm going to pick the layup here with Lamar Jackson because Detroit was already banged up in the secondary. They've allowed a 75% completion rate so far, Detroit, to opposing quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson coming off one of the best performances of his career, completed 69% of his passes against the Kansas City Chiefs. And he's running more than he has in the past. He's averaged 14 rush attempts per game so far in 2021. It's a small sample size, but I don't really expect that to go down because of the running back situation with Baltimore. So all things considered, yeah, some people might say, okay, I'm scared here because they're such big underdogs. They're just going to get up and do nothing. That's not really what Baltimore does. They just keep running the ball, and Lamar is basically one of their main running backs. So I think the potential here for just a monster game, we're talking like almost the double bonus, is definitely on the table. And I think at under 8K, Lamar Jackson probably grades out as the favorite for me.
All right, he landed on the injury report for the 4th time in his career yesterday,
it's a stomach bug.
Okay, all right, man. Hey, he did. Hey, I will give you this. He cleared that massive hurdle by finally beating Patrick Mahomes last week.
I'm glad there's a red question mark beside Lamar Jackson because it'll probably just be lower ownership. So.
All right, dude. Awesome. Good for you. I hope it works out. Talk to me about running back here, Jeff.
I'm going to roll the dice a little bit more here, and I'm going to go with Jonathan Taylor. Really rough start to the season with Jonathan Taylor, 3.3 yards per carry. Under 7K, though, in price now. This is kind of like the buy low spot. Look, he's playing Tennessee. 34 points allowed per game. Yeah, a lot of it's coming against the pass. We want to attack the secondary. They're not exactly great against the run either here. Indy's idea early in the game here is going to be to get Jonathan Taylor the ball, because if they get him going, it means Jacob Eason and maybe Brett Hundley has to throw less. I think that the opportunities have been there for Jonathan Taylor. He leads the league in red zone touches so far. He just hasn't got it in the end zone. Eventually that dam is going to break. He's also seeing more passes, set a career high in targets in week 1. I think Jonathan Taylor is a good buy low target here, especially in the big fields.
Okay, what about you, Steven? Which running back do you have your eye on?
I I really like Austin Eckler this week going up against the Chiefs. Dating back since 2018, he's done very well against his team. He's averaged 20.3 DraftKings fantasy points against the Chiefs throughout his career, and he's handling 20.8% of the red zone opportunities. Now, the Chargers are underdogs in this game, and that plays right into what Eckler does best, and that's catching out of the backfield. He caught all 9 of his targets last week, should be able to do that once again against a vulnerable Chiefs run defense. They've already allowed 116 plus rushing yards to opposing running backs and 4 rushing touchdowns against the Browns and the Ravens. So if Eckler is going to be busy coming out of the backfield, if he's going to continue to handle those red zone opportunities, I'll absolutely take him at a very reasonable price at 7,200 this week. There's a lot of good running backs on this slate. Don't get me wrong, but I think Eckler is going to be someone that isn't going to be overly popular, but I think he's in a really good matchup against the Chiefs.
Yeah, man, that matchup has the makings of a high-scoring affair, too, on Sunday. Should be a sexy, sexy Sunday showdown. What about at wide receiver, Steve? Which dude stands out to you?
Yeah, I'm going to be pairing Russell Wilson with Tyler Lockett. It's always hard to figure out which receiver from the Seahawks you want to take with Russell Wilson, but Lockett, at least in the early going, has been that guy, and he probably has one of the best wide receiver cornerback matchups of the week, going against Bashaud Breeland, who was formerly with the Chiefs, and now he's making a really bad impression with the Vikings. He's already been targeted against 12 times, has allowed 9 receptions for 155 yards, which is an average of 17.2 yards per reception. Opposing wide receivers have also scored on him 3 times already this season. We're only in week 3. That leads the league. What's he doing? Is he still with the Chiefs and just doesn't realize? I don't understand. What's he doing to the Vikings? He's trying to destroy them from the inside. I have no idea. But even if that's the case or not, that means Tyler Lockett's in a great spot this week, 7,400. I mentioned how high this total is. There should be plenty of opportunities for Lockett this week.
Okay, Jeff, what about you, man? You got a little contrarian stack with Lamar Jackson, or do you want to go elsewhere?
I mean, I definitely do not mind pairing Lamar Jackson with Marquise Brown, since you brought it up. But you mentioned the sexy matchups on this slate, Emerson, and I agree with Steve. I don't think there's anything sexier for fantasy than Seattle versus Minnesota this week. These two defenses are terrible. They are bad. Look, Seattle just got run over last week, but I like attacking them through the air here. Everyone's going to be on Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook is seriously questionable. He's actually dealing with a real injury to the ankles. Go to Justin Jefferson here. Justin Jefferson still averaging far more depth per target than Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen has just found the end zone a couple more times, so he's had the hot start. Jefferson is leading the team in targets with 19. This is going to be a back-and-forth game. If Russell Wilson and Tyler Lockett go off, which I think Steve is absolutely correct in saying they're about to, Justin Jefferson is going to go off on the other side because the Seattle secondary can't cover players like Justin Jefferson. So I think this is a great buy low spot on a player who's just started out. He hasn't even been that bad. He scored a touchdown last week, but no one's going to play him because everybody on this field is going to look at Dalvin Cook and say, well, we're just going to get another big game out of a running back against Seattle. I think the Seattle rush defense could actually bounce back here. Dalvin Cook's not healthy. Go to Justin Jefferson. Going to be super low owned in a great matchup.
Yeah, man. On the DK Sportsbook, I'm looking at it now. Seahawks, Vikings tied with Bucks and Rams for highest total on the slate, 55. So that shows you what odds makers think high scoring game could be on the docket. Tight end, a top-heavy position here once again this season. So, Jeff, who do you target here? Whose price do you like?
This is probably my favorite play of the week. I don't understand why people aren't willing to trust TJ Hawkinson. I really thought he would be like the highest-owned player at this position, but he's really not projecting to be 5,200. He's averaging 10 targets a game. Look, I know it's Detroit and Jared Goff. Jared Goff is throwing the ball a lot, 46.5 pass attempts. This story isn't going to change. Detroit's defense isn't getting better. They're more banged up than they were last week, and they're taking on the Ravens. Teams throw a lot against the Ravens, too, because they're always behind. Look, there's really nothing bad about this matchup. Detroit's playing at the 5th fastest place in the league. Baltimore's allowed the most receptions to opposing tight ends. Well, I'm not sure why people don't want to buy in here with TJ Hawkinson at 5,200, but I really like playing Lamar Jackson. Maybe you throw in Marquise Brown, too. Then you come back with TJ Hawkinson. He's too cheap, and I don't think the field is going to be heavy on him at all.
No, he's got back-to-back games with 8 grabs. Steve, who's your tight end this week?
Yeah, I'm going back to, one of the chalk plays that busted last week, and Tyler Higbee. You are not going to run against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It just doesn't happen. And you look at the numbers, and it backs that up. They faced a 74% pass rate by opponents. That's the most in the league. So now you have someone like Higbee going against the Buccaneers, who is going to be very involved in this offense. And the Buccaneers have been okay against the tight end through 2 weeks. 16 receptions allowed, 153 yards. They haven't allowed a touchdown as of yet, but I think Higbee's going to be busy this week. The ownership is going to be down because he didn't exactly do well in what was supposed to be a good matchup for him last week. But with the way that the Rams are not going to be able to run in this game, they're going to have to resort to the pass. This is a very close game, as close to a pick'em as it was this morning. So I think there's going to be a lot of passing in this game. And I think Higbee's going to be one of the better, cheaper options on a position that is very top heavy, like you mentioned.
All right, good stuff, man. Before we wrap up this segment, though, yes, I do agree with you, and I support you, Steven. About last night, Christian McCaffrey here, dudes, leaving the Panthers win over the Texans with a hamstring injury. People on Twitter were very fired up about it. Trust me on that. It was Chuba Hubbard or Chuba Hubbard and Royce Freeman who filled the role, but not that effectively. So can you break down, please, for us, the fantasy impact of McCaffrey missing time for Carolina, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure everyone was very complimentary, just giving Christian McCaffrey like shout outs and stuff. I'm sure that's all it was on Twitter. But as far as what you want to look at here going forward, yeah, Hubert looked overwhelmed. I mean, let's just be dead honest. I think Carolina was giving him touches because they were playing the Texans and Davis Mills, and they didn't really care at that point. But I think when you're going forward, Royce Freeman is the guy who can step in here. He was an every down back in Oregon when he was in college. He handled a massive workload. He has the capabilities to stand in, be a good pass catcher, and he's not Christian McCaffrey. He's not gonna get you like 5 yards per carry, but he'll definitely grind it out. He's not gonna make those mistakes that Hubbard made. So I'd really actually look to Royce Freeman here going forward if McCaffrey misses a significant amount of time.
Okay, what's the fantasy outlook for both of these potential fill-ins, Steve?
Well, first and foremost, when the injury occurred, I thought McCaffrey was doing a little like swag jump there. So I was surprised that was actually an injury. I thought he was like just
I agree.
Smooth.
That was a lot like the old school like Fred Taylor. You kind of wait, you little hop, and then you hit the hole, baby.
So when he was hurt, I was like, oh, that wasn't on purpose. That was actually unfortunate. And, you know, it's really unfortunate for the Panthers that they don't have Mike Davis anymore. He was an absolute monster in that role for the Panthers last year. They don't have that anymore. And if anything is an indication from what we saw last night, Hubbard does not catch the ball well. I know it was a very, very small sample, but that really was a big thing for me. I agree with Jeff. I think Freeman's going to be the better option in this backfield. You know, obviously you can't really judge on that half of game that we saw from both of them, but I was not really overly impressed from what I saw from Hubbard. Wasn't a big pass catcher at Oklahoma State in his 3 years with them. So I think Freeman could end up being that guy. Hopefully it's not anything too extreme for McCaffrey. If it's a grade 1 strain, he might miss about 1 to 3 weeks. Anything worse from that, you're talking about potentially half a season. So really hoping for that grade 1 strain. But yeah, the Panthers, without Mike Davis, they look like a very vulnerable team at that position this season.
I think Freeman's got a lot of Mike Davis in him. That's not necessarily a compliment, but it does kind of tell you where the usage is probably going to go.
Yeah, dude, break the glass, send up the smoke signals, pop the flares, call in the military because we are now at DEFCON 1 with Christian McCaffrey going down. You two, good stuff. Please hang out, though, because, Jeff, we need you for some NFL best bets. Steve, you're on deck for some MLB chase or fade right after Pierce Dietrich takes a gander at salaries for Sunday's South Point 400 from Las Vegas Motor Speedway in this week's edition of NASCAR Price Check.
Welcome to the Price Check. I'm Pierce Dietrich. Let's look at the salaries for Las Vegas. Whose salary jumped up this week? Daniel Suarez, $6,600 up to $7,600. Trackhouse Racing is stabilized. They're not as bad as they were. They're not as good as they were. They've been a top 25 car in each of the last 5 races. Chris Buescher, $6,700 up to $7,300. The price spikes are not elite teams. It's all value guys with place differential possibilities. He had a top 15 car in the last Las Vegas race. Corey LaJoie, $5,600 up to $6,200. He's been better in the 750 package. Even in that package, he's not worth $6,200. Whose salary dropped this week? Bubba Wallace, $7,500 down to $6,700. Had a top 20 car in the first Las Vegas race, but a power steering issue ruined his day. Kyle Busch, 11,500 down to 10,800. Vegas is his hometown track, but it has been one of his worst tracks. He has little confidence in the setup at this racetrack. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., 7,200 down to 6,800. Kansas and Vegas are comparable tracks, and both of his finishes at these races was subject to lucky or unlucky cautions. Favorite play of the week? You know who it is. Kyle Larson, $11,000 at the intermediate tracks. He's averaging 50 hog points per race. He destroyed the competition at Kansas and at Las Vegas. J.J. Yaley, $5,400. We're rolling with Yaley starting DFL. He's got a top 30 finish in 5 of 6 races this season. All right, guys, check out DK Nation for all your DFS information and needs. If you got NASCAR questions, find me on Twitter at Race for the Prize. I am Pierce Dietrich. Catch me on DK Live.
All right, everybody, we did that NFL thing. It was a thrilling segment with Steve Buchanan and Jeff, and Steve did such a fantastic job. We're going to bring him in now as part of our baseball panel. He's good at that as well. You're very welcome. And his fellow DraftKings contributor, Matt Meiselman, is here. Guys, this is MLB Chase or Fade, so I need you to agree or disagree with the following DFS plays on tonight's 15-game MLB slate. Jam-packed, loaded, exciting as the wild card races are getting even more wild. Jose Barrios is one of the top-priced pitchers on this slate this evening. Toronto visiting Minnesota. The Jays hurler has picked up a win in 4 of his last 5 starts, has gone over 20 DK fantasy points in each of those wins. So I need you to chase or fade for me, Steve, that Barrios is your favorite top-priced pitcher tonight.
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, here's the thing about Barrios. Like, on the surface, he's looked great. Like, you look at his numbers, they all look fine, but, you know, his FIP has consistently been like 4+ really all throughout the month of September. And the Twins really aren't an offense that you like worry about overall, but they're the top team at hitting the game total over in the league. They do it almost all the time, consistently. And Barrios has some issues with lefties. There's not a ton of lefties in this Twins lineup, but there are a couple in there that you have to worry about, especially someone like Nick Gordon, who's just absolutely hitting the cover off the ball. Who's Nick Gordon? I don't really know either. But he's averaging over like 20 DraftKings fantasy points over his last 5 games. He's absolutely crushing the ball at this point. When I look at the board here, I love using Max Fried tonight, going against the Padres, who is in an absolute free fall all throughout the month of September. They've officially been eliminated out of the NL West. They're 6 games back in the wild card. Like, it looks like that they're going absolutely nowhere. But this team, for as stacked as they are, have an isolated power against lefties, just 151. Fried has been one of the most consistent pitchers for the Braves all season long. He's gone at least 6 innings in 10 straight starts. I think this is a great spot for him tonight against a free-falling Padres team.
Okay, Matt, I need you to chase or fade for me. Barrios is your favorite top-priced pitcher.
No, I'm fading too. I actually agree with a lot of what Steve said. I like Max Fried also, and I think there's a bunch of other options who are just better than Barrios. We didn't mention the most important part of the start, though. This is a revenge game in Minnesota. Barrios faced the Twins last time, but that one was at home. This one's in Minnesota. First time he's going to be there. I don't really care about that. I don't really like him regardless. 9,500 is probably too much for Barrios in almost any matchup. And like Steve said, the Twins are not the best of matchups. They're probably a slightly below average matchup for a pitcher. So I'm fading Barrios. I think there's a bunch of other guys. I think most people are going to look to Sonny Gray, Dylan Cease, who are a little bit cheaper. I think those are fine options. Those are probably your cash game options. And then there's a bunch of other pitchers who are just, I think, better raw output pitchers and cost less than Barrios does. So I'm not paying all the way up to him either.
Okay, Matt, let's see what you do here. Let's check out an expensive hitter on today's slate. Mookie Betts currently riding a 14-game hit streak in which he's hitting .333, 3 doubles, 2 home runs, 8 ribbies. He's also going up against the D-backs tonight, who he's hitting over 300 against this season. So chase or fade for me that Mookie is your top favorite priced hitter tonight. Talking top prices.
I'm fading this, and it's not because I'm against Mookie for any reason. I think it's just the dynamics of this slate. So we kind of have a weird setup tonight where even with 15 games, I think the ownership gets pretty concentrated because there's a lot of cheap pitching, and there's also a Coors game. And then there's this Dodgers game in Arizona where it's pretty clear the Dodgers are in a really advantageous spot. So I think the field pays down for pitcher for the most part and pays up for bats at Coors and pays up for bats for the Dodgers. And I think that leaves one guy in particular that I like just way more, who I want to prioritize over Mookie Betts, and that's the likely AL MVP, Shohei Ohtani, who I've been touting a lot lately. He hasn't been quite as good in recent games, but he's going to be facing who I think could be the highest owned pitcher on the slate in Logan Gilbert. And even if he wasn't, I think that Ohtani is maybe the best fantasy hitter in the league right now with the struggles that Fernando Tatis has had, just the combination of speed and power that Mookie doesn't really have. I mean, Mookie is a good power hitter. He can steal some bases, but Ohtani is better in both areas. And when we're talking fantasy points, those are really the things that matter the most. So I like Ohtani a lot. And then you get the added bonus that he's facing Gilbert, who could top 30% in some of these tournaments. So it's not that I don't like Mookie. I think he's playable for sure. I think he is one of the better pay-up options, but I just like Ohtani better.
Steve, chase or fade Mookie as your favorite top price hitter tonight.
Yeah, so Mookie is in the midst of that hitting streak, but in that hitting streak, he's only averaged over 10 DraftKings fantasy points 5 times. He's just hitting a lot of singles, not really doing much during that hitting streak. So while he is giving you points, he still almost feels overpriced because he's just not getting the overall production. I like Brandon Belt tonight at Coors Field going up against Peter Lambert, who's making his first start in the majors since 2019. Went on a rehab assignment, made 7 starts, wasn't exactly impressive in any of them. But Brandon Belt, this is not somebody you usually look at for production on a normal basis, but he has been smashing, specifically in the month of September and against righties. Against righties on the year, he's averaging 10 DraftKings fantasy points. Like, this dude is just consistently putting up double-digit fantasy points. Obviously, you like being in Coors Field, where the over is not hitting much at all. It's like 45% on the year, but the Giants are in such a great spot against his pitching staff, against his putrid bullpen. So at 5,300, he's somebody that I would likely see be able to reach value on his salary over a more expensive Mookie Betts, who really is just kind of bad-bipping pitchers to death at this point.
Steve, let's go with some value now. Who is a cheaper pitcher you are chasing?
Yeah, Matt already mentioned this, but Logan Gilbert is going to be one of the most popular plays on this slate, and like rightfully so, going up against the Angels, who just, feel like they've just given up offensively, except for Shohei Ohtani because he's chasing that MVP prize. But this is going to be the 3rd time that he's faced this team. He's absolutely dominated them in both of those starts. Has gone 10 in the 3rd innings, given up, struck out 16 in those games. He's done really well against them, and really well in the month of September. He goes fairly deep into games. He has some good strikeout upside, and like I mentioned, this offense is just really not going to give you much pushback. So I like this on a red-hot Seattle team at the right time, baby. They're still alive. They're still alive in the playoff contention. But I think Gilbert gets it done tonight and is one of the better value plays, but it's not going to be a secret.
There's no bigger Seattle stan on this planet than Steve Buchanan, everybody.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Anything for you. Matt, give me a cheap pitcher you are chasing tonight.
So Gilbert's interesting, and I think if you're playing cash games, you probably just play him. I think he's a little higher variance than people realize. He doesn't get a lot of ground balls, and he is a good strikeout pitcher who doesn't walk that many guys. So I think you could see some games here and there where he gives up a few home runs, and then some other games where he just strikes out everybody. So Gilbert was undervalued about a month or so ago when he had a really bad game in Houston against the Astros. And I think that everyone kind of turned against him there. And now we've seen the opposite effect where he's had a few good starts in a row and maybe people are getting a little too excited. I think the talent is certainly there, just at his expected ownership. It's just not that exciting for tournaments. Cash, I think it's fine. And then I think Gray and Gibson are probably among the more popular options too. So that leaves one pitcher in my mind who's cheaper that I don't think the field wants to play, and that's Ryan Yarbrough, who just has not been good lately. And he's getting an opener put in front of him tonight, I think, with David Robertson. I think the Rays are more inclined to do that because Yarbrough has struggled a little bit, but his matchup tonight could not possibly be any better. This Marlins team traded away all of their good hitters at the deadline for the most part. Jesus Aguilar was probably the best guy they had left to face a left-handed pitcher. He's out of the lineup. Jorge Alfaro's out of the lineup, so there's less power from the right-hand side for Yarbrough to worry about. The Marlins, I think, are the worst offense in the MLB right now, and pitching in Tampa Bay is a good spot for a pitcher. So Yarbrough, 7,200. Assuming that he's a lot more contrarian than some of these other guys, that's why I like him more.
All right, guys, last one here. A value bat you are chasing. Steven.
Yeah, I mentioned him earlier when we were talking about Barrios, but Nick Gordon at only 2,200 going against the Blue Jays tonight. You can't get a better value than that. Barrios has struggled against lefties. You look at his numbers all throughout the year, 338 WOBA against him, 4.17 FIP, and a 1.5 home run per 9 inning. Then you have Gordon, who I exaggerated how much he was averaging over his past 5 games. It's actually 15.8, but that's pretty close to 20. So it's not like I was, overly wrong. But that's 2 doubles, a home run, 8 RBI, and 3 runs scored over that span. He's probably going to be one of the guys that gives Barrios the most trouble in this lineup because he does bat from the left-handed side of the plate. And this has been an issue for Barrios all throughout the year. So Nick Gordon at 2,200, he does not have to do much. Don't do that, Matt. He does not have to do much to return value at just 2,200. So for someone who's near the bare minimum, he's one of my favorite plays tonight.
Matt, are you okay?
Yeah, that was a real cough, I promise. I have no problem with Nick
All
Gordon.
right, sorry, he's so used to doing segments with Nick Fryer and going back and forth. I felt like Steve was ready to attack you.
That guy.
We've already established we're on the same page with Barrios. So neither of us likes him that much today.
All right, give me a value bet, Matt, real quick.
So quickly, I like Brandon Marsh again. I mentioned him yesterday, though, so I'll give one more. But Marsh is facing Gilbert, so I think the leverage play for a 2K leadoff hitter makes a lot of sense. And then the other guy I like is Christian Yelich, who has not been good, but he's 3,900 against Tyler McGill, who has a massive platoon split. McGill has a ground ball rate above 50% against righties. Against lefties, it's in the 20s. He's just a different pitcher against the two sides of the plate. Yelich is a really good hitter who just hasn't been as good as he's supposed to be this year. He's $3,900. It's just way too cheap for him. And I also think he's probably a contrarian option because there's so many outfielders to choose from at Coors and on the Dodgers. So I think he's both too cheap and goes overlooked tonight.
All right, dudes, really appreciate it. We're going to head back to the NFL. But first, Julian Edlow and VSiN's Tim Murray will break down some of their favorite bets for this weekend in college football on the latest edition of the Unreasonable Odds podcast.
There's one spot that I really like.
Is this going to be, hold on, is this going to be the best bet?
I guess, yeah. All right. Yeah.
Where's yours? College football week 4, best bet from Tim Murray here.
All right, let's see if it comes home. So Indiana just had their heart ripped out from their chest last weekend, right? You're up 14-0. I was on Indiana because the world was on Cincinnati. So of course I was on the Hoosiers. 14-0. You get a stop. A bogus targeting call is called. Best linebackers ejected from the game. They go down. Cincinnati scores a touchdown. Then you get a terrible interception from Michael Penix. 14-10 at the half. Game is flipped on its head. Yep. Ultimately, Cincinnati wins that game by 2 touchdowns, gets the cover for the world because everybody was on Cincinnati. Next week, Indiana goes to Happy Valley, a rematch of one of the more thrilling games last year, right? The overtime game, the Penix touchdown, was it not? Was it a touchdown? Whatever. This weekend, they've got to go on the road, Julian, to Bowling Green, Kentucky, and take on Western Kentucky. A night game. It's family weekend at Western Kentucky. They're telling their fans it's a blackout. They're wearing their black uniforms. And if anybody has seen what Western Kentucky has done this year, it's amazing. So Western Kentucky was one of the worst offensive teams in the country last year. They were like 117th in yards per play. So what they decided to do, they took the entire offensive staff essentially from Houston Baptist, this high-flying FCS team. They got their OC, the quarterback, and 3 wide receivers. They all come into Western Kentucky. After 2 games, they are tops in the country in yards per play. Bailey Zappi is the name of the quarterback. He's completing 75% of his passes. And now they've had a bye week to prepare for Indiana. They're getting 9 points at home. And one last wrinkle, they played Army, Western Kentucky did 2 weeks ago. They were down by 3 touchdowns. They were getting 6 on the road at West Point. Guess what happened? Backdoor cover, 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. They are a high-flying offense. I think they could absolutely keep this game within the number. Love it that it's north of a touchdown. I would even sprinkle maybe a little bit on the money line. But I just love the spot. It's a sandwich spot for Indiana. Just lost to Cincinnati, Penn State next week. And now we go on the road to play a hyped-up atmosphere. It's a night game, which I love. So give me some Hilltopper action. And I'm just fascinated to see this offense and see if it can shine against a Power 5 competition, because it was an FCS team, Tennessee Martin, I think, week 1, and then it was Army, which they lost, but they lost by 3. So a bye week, they're going to be all amped up. So I like Western Kentucky plus the 9 against Indiana.
Fair. I like it. A home dog in a big game. All right, I will quickly give out my best bet for college football. We're going late night. We're going with a big favorite, BYU first half minus 13.5, hosting South Florida. South Florida is not good. They played an FCS school last week, weren't able to cover. First half so far this season, we saw their only road game. They went to NC State to start the season, down 24-0 at halftime, ultimately lose the game 45-0. They did play Florida the next week, covered against Florida, a little bit worrisome. Way backdoor. That was a look-ahead spot for Florida to Alabama. They completely shut down the second half. Do you know what the halftime score of that game was, Tim?
A lot to a little.
A lot to a little. 35-3 Gators. Yeah. Absolutely smoked them in the first half. Similar to what happened on the road against NC State. So South Florida doesn't scare me at all. BYU, 3-0 against Pac-12 competition. What have they done? They led Arizona by 11 at halftime before ultimately Arizona did cover that one, only an 8-point game. Then 2 outright wins as underdogs for BYU, up 16-7 at half against Utah, up 21-7 at half against Arizona State. They have been coming out and taking care of business at home. I think they're going to come out and throttle this South Florida team from the get-go and be up at least 2 touchdowns when they go to the locker room.
And you get to stay up late, which is always a nice thing.
Oh, God. Yeah, I got to work Sunday morning. I got to be in studio for DraftKings. We got NFL content to take care of. I might be asleep when that one hopefully cashes. But out in Vegas, let's see. That's why you live the dream out there in Vegas. Nice and early kickoff for you.
Yeah, it was. It's nice. I got to enjoy that whole Fresno State UCLA game last weekend, which was just glorious, especially if you had the points with Fresno State.
Yeah. Yes, I did maybe have a little bit of points with Fresno State there. No money line, though.
All right, guys, back to the gridiron. Talking week 3. Yes, this is not week 4 for everyone who's already focused on Tom Brady week. That's next week. Let's talk bets here because we did the DFS thing earlier in this show. Our NFL panel for this segment, Pierce Dietrich, Jeff Ulrich, couple DraftKings contributors, great friends of mine. NFL best bets, guys. Favorite bets for the week 3 slates. Give me your favorite pick against the spread, Jeff.
Yeah, well, this is going to be a theme of this entire segment, but I'm going to be picking on the Minnesota Vikings, and my favorite pick is Seattle -2 right now. Minnesota they just tend to get just a little bit too much respect. It's like Mike Zimmer things, like, oh, Mike Zimmer's a good head coach, the Vikings must be good. They were 6-10 ATS last year with Mike Zimmer. This has not been a good team to bet on in terms of against the spread. And look, they have a clear mismatch at quarterback with Russell Wilson versus Kirk Cousins. You've got 2 defenses who are probably equally bad. If anything, you give the slight edge to Seattle, I would say, just based on the start of the year that Minnesota has had. And yeah, okay, it's a road game, but it's really not that big a deal, again, when you've got Russell Wilson at quarterback. So matchups, all things considered, I think Russell Wilson is going to eat this secondary alive. If the Seattle defense even shows up a little bit, this one might not even be close. So Seattle -2, easily my favorite bet on the Sunday main slate anyways.
Dude, listen to this weird stat, too. So the Seahawks have played well at this point in the season, obviously, but they own a 9-2 ATS record over the last 11 week 3 games. I'm done. You can find anything you want to find on the internet. Pierce.
Pretty good at the start of the year last year, too.
Yeah. Pierce, what about you, dude? Your favorite pick against the spread?
That's some impressive Googling. I know every stat is out there, but locating them sometimes can be pretty difficult.
Thank you.
Kudos to you there. I like the Raiders, -4.5. Julie and I talked about this yesterday. I don't understand why this line has not moved. It's staying where it is. I love this line. The public likes this line. The big money likes this line. It's got to move. I don't get it. The Dolphins are going to have a backup quarterback. The Dolphins just got destroyed 35-0 against the Bills team that doesn't really look that great at the moment. The Raiders are looking pretty decent too as well. The offensive line's playing well. The defensive line's playing well. They've got some serious weapons on that team with Carr. Ruggs, Edwards, Waller, they can all be dangerous. Jacobs hasn't gotten going yet because he's not quite 100%, but this is a great spot for him to get moving in this game because Dolphins struggled against the run last season. The Dolphins have struggled this season. I love this. And just another reminder, you should follow @Julian Edlow. That's where you can find out some key betting stats.
Hey,
Don't do that.
Yeah, relax there, Pierce. Relax. I know it's Friday, but chill, dude. Here's a good one for you, Pierce. Vegas, 4-1 against the spread in their last 5 games following a straight-up win. I've got it all today, baby. Give me your favorite game total now, Pierce.
Bears versus Browns over 45.5. The Browns should be fine. Give the ball to Chubb, give the ball to Hunt, do the play action with Baker Mayfield. They're going to get their 24 points. The question is, what about the Bears? Well, we talked about this yesterday. The Browns defense is not playing well. The defensive line has issues. I know they've got big names, but they don't have chemistry. They're not committing to their pass rush lanes. Clowney's been a big offender, and that's creating problems. The quarterbacks are being allowed to step up in the pocket. Quarterbacks are being allowed to run. And guess what? Justin Fields is a rushing quarterback. I know Jeff wrote about him in his DK Nation playbook article this week. He likes Fields. I like Fields. Also, on third downs, the Browns are only stopping their opponents 38% of the time. So if the Browns can score, we're pretty confident in that. The Bears should be able to move the ball. It's not going to be pretty at times, but he'll be able to move. And then I wouldn't be surprised to see the Browns have to blitz because the pass rush isn't working. And if they're blitzing more, it's going to open up some deep balls for Fields, who, as Jeff mentioned in his article, is a gunslinger.
Favorite total, Johnny over. Also, Pierce, way to plug Jeff's article.
Absolutely. Go to DKNation.com and go read that right now. But Pierce is right. That total is too low. I don't mind that one. I'm an overs guy, but I said I was going to pick on this Seahawks-Vikings game, and we're going over 55 here as well. This is an easy one for me. Vikings 13-5 over the last 2 years now at hitting overs. They are 7-1 when they are at home hitting overs. Mike Zimmer's defense is not good. It has not been good in 2021. Now he's got Russell Wilson coming to town, and we all know what Seattle did last week. I mean, look, if Dalvin Cook plays or if he doesn't play, it doesn't matter here because it just means Justin Jefferson is going to get more targets and we'll probably get a faster-paced game. I think that Seattle, if I like them to win this game, they're probably going to have to put up 30-plus points, so you might as well take the over as well here. But this one, I think if we were later in the season, you'd actually see this total bigger. But again, people don't want to react. They think, oh, this is a big total, so no one's betting the over. This one is too small still. At 55, you take the over here against two bad defenses.
Our NFL Best Bets segment continues on the DK Sportsbook. Favorite underdog outright, Jeff.
Yeah, this one is another easy one. We're going to go to a different game finally, but the Green Bay Packers at plus 150. They're on the road against San Francisco. Look, again, you've got another quarterback mismatch here. Jimmy Garoppolo has definitely started the season well, but you saw that Green Bay defense. Obviously, people, I get it. They're a little bit concerned here. Could San Francisco just run all day against this Green Bay defense? But you saw them pick it up a little bit. They finally started to get some pressure on Jared Goff. Now they take on another pocket quarterback who basically is just a statue back there in Jimmy Garoppolo. If they just get a little bit of pressure on him here, I think that's going to be enough to make a difference. San Francisco's backfield is banged up a little bit. We saw Aaron Jones, Devontae Adams. They started to get on track. I think that just continues here. San Francisco down Jason Verrett. You're probably going to see Devontae Adams, take over. Maybe he'll have the 3-touchdown game in this one. But either way, Green Bay plus 150. This one, I wouldn't be shocked if this shifts closer to like Green Bay plus 1 and this line dives. Take the money line right now on Green Bay.
All right, favorite underdog outright, Pierce.
The Bengals are only 3-point dogs at Pittsburgh. That's pretty. It's crazy historically, traditionally. The Bengals never win at Pittsburgh, but since this line is this close, they can win this thing outright. The Steelers don't look good. Yes, they won a surprise upset against the Bills in week 1 because of a blocked punt. The Bills aren't really looking that good, and we saw the Steelers struggle in week 2 against the Raiders. They've got injuries all over the place. Watt, Bush, Hayden, Cameron Sutton is still just transitioning to be their other cornerback. He's never played on the outside. Tons of question marks there. Their offensive line is new. There's question marks all over this Steelers team, and we're seeing that in their performance. They do not look good. The Bengals are only 3-point dogs. The Bengals can win outright. And speaking of that offensive line that the Steelers have, the Bengals, probably their best strength is the pass rush. If that pass rush can get going, that can keep them in the game. We know Burrow has the weapons. They just need to be consistent. And I think they can be consistent against a Steelers defense that's depleted.
All right, so favorite player prop. We'll wrap up the segment with that. Pierce.
Well, let's parlay it. I like Justin Fields at over 54.5. We already talked about that. But how about Daniel Jones at 26.5? We talked about this earlier in the week. Jones rushed for 27 yards in his first game, 95 yards in his second game. People say, oh, well, that's just a fluke. He's a quarterback. He's scrambling. These are design plays. These are design draws. These are RPOs. Teams are honoring Saquon Barkley, and that's allowing Daniel Jones to hold the ball and run the ball. He should have had 150 yards last week. He's facing a terrible Atlanta team, and this Giants offense is going to sneak up on people. I think there might be something special here.
All right, anything special in your eyes, Jeff, when it comes to player props?
There is. Look, take advantage of the fact no one's talking about Russell Wilson yet. this is my favorite bet of the week. Russell Wilson over 283.5 passing yards. The Vikings have given up 9.3 yards per pass attempt so far, 5th worst in the league. They've given up a 77% completion rate to opposing quarterbacks. Russell Wilson is playing out of his mind again. He's got elite wide receivers going up against a weak Minnesota secondary. This one it's my favorite bet of the week by far, regardless. Player prop spreads, etc. Take the over on Russell Wilson. We're getting too low on his props because, again, you got Brady. Everyone's talking about Brady, Stafford. Just kind of ignoring him and forgetting Russell Wilson is balling, and he's got a great matchup. So give me the over there.
Gentlemen, awesome work. I cannot wait to see you this weekend on The Sweat, a Sunday edition of The Sweat. We will cover the bases, talking some of the biggest baseball bets on the DK Sportsbook right after this quick break. All right, we're bringing everybody home, taking a trip around the bases with our MLB panel, RotoWire's Paul Bruno and Eric Halterman. Good morning, dudes. We are covering the bases. This is when we get your favorite MLB bets in the following categories for tonight's slate on the DraftKings Sportsbook. First base, favorite run line or money line, Eric?
Yeah, this is the time of the year where you get a lot of pretty lopsided lines because you got a lot of games where one team cares and the other doesn't. But we have at least one game where one team has reason to care and the other doesn't, that isn't lopsided, and that's the Mariners, which are now, it looks like, minus 130 over the Angels. It was at minus 120, I think, when the show started, but I still like it at 130. The Mariners, not likely to make the playoffs, but they're still about 5% playoff odds according to Fangraphs, still very much incentivized to try to win every game they can, whereas the Angels are not in that place. And you could tell by the way the Angels offense has performed in September. They're last by WRC plus compared to the Mariners sitting in 14th, middle of the pack. So pretty decent advantage on the offensive side for the Mariners, and I think they have the advantage on the mound as well. Logan Gilbert, well, he does have a 4.74 ERA on the season. Most of the ERA estimators have him right around 4 or even lower. FIP, in fact, has him all the way down at 3.55. Strikes out above average number of guys, 26.3% against just a 5% walk rate. That is a formula that's going to work for him going forward at much better than a 4.74 ERA clip. He had a few bad starts to end August, but 4 good ones in September, a 2.01 ERA for the month. So I'm feeling pretty confident in him right now. Jose Suarez on the other side is fine in 12 starts this year. 4.43 ERA looks about what he deserves according to the estimators. Above average, but not elite ground ball rate, more or less making up for being slightly subpar in both strikeouts and walks, but not a lot to get excited about there, which I think gives the Mariners, again, pretty clean advantage on both sides of the ball here.
All right, Paul, favorite run line or money line bet?
Emerson, this one's for you. I have a look at the run line taking the Jays against Minnesota, minus 1.5, one for 105 payoff. Jose Barrios starts for the first time as a visitor in Minnesota and comes into this contest on a roll, having put together a string of 5 straight quality starts. He has 36 strikeouts against only 3 walks and has last 34 innings pitched. Meanwhile, his mound opponent Bailey Ober has been roughed up recently, including one start against the Jays, where he surrendered a total of 5 homers and 11 runs over his last 18 and a third innings pitched. Clearly, the stakes are higher for the visitors, and they need to bounce back after two straight lopsided losses. Meanwhile, this is a bullpen day for the Tampa Rays, which does not come with the negative connotation that it does for most other teams. They have plenty of quality and depth back there and will play their patented matchup game to the hilt tonight. that should spell trouble for a Miami team that has one of the worst offenses and has given up 32 runs in their last 5 games. This is a rivalry weekend, though, which gives the home side another added incentive. I gladly give up 1.5 for a plus 105 win on the run line here.
Hey, bartender, make it a double. Let's go to second base. Favorite game total, Paul?
Can you imagine the atmosphere in Boston and New York's wild card game if that should come to pass? We get a preview of that crazy atmosphere tonight when both teams start their aces on the mound. Garrett Cole faces Nathan Eovaldi this evening. If you ignore Cole's last start, both pitchers have dominated all opponents in recent weeks. They both have impressive histories against the opposing batting orders too. So I'm looking forward to a pitcher's duel that will keep the game total well under the line set at 9 runs tonight. Later on, I see the D-backs facing their nemesis, the Los Angeles Dodgers tonight. The season series is 14-2 for LA, with Arizona averaging less than 3 runs per game in that set. With the line set up at 10 total runs, I'm counting on LA to maintain that trend of winning, but it leaves their offense to score at least 7 runs if they hold Arizona down 3 or less. Again, that's a tall order when you consider they've done that only twice in their last 7 games. So again, I'm taking the underside here.
All right, Eric, favorite game total?
Yeah, I'm fully with Paul on that first one in particular. Just not really sure why a game with Garrett Cole and Nathan Eovaldi doesn't have the lowest over-under. I know it's 2 good offenses. The offenses are averaging 9.6 runs per game on the season, but yeah, I think these 2 pitchers should lead to a result that's easily 2 runs below expected. All they have to do is get under 9. Cole has a few shaky starts lately, but I'm not all that worried. Even though he gave up 7 runs on 10 hits against Cleveland his last time out, he did strike out 7 while walking 1, so it's not as if he completely lost the zone or anything like that. Obviously, over the course of the season, he's been as elite as you'd expect. 3.03 ERA, striking out 34.2% of opposing batters, walking less than 6%. That's the 3rd highest strikeout rate among qualified starters, combined with, I think it's about the 10th to 12th best walk rate. And on the other side, Nathan Eovaldi actually leads all qualified starters in walk rate at just 4.4%, and he's combined it with an above-average strikeout rate. He's particularly whiffing lots of guys lately, which I think I'll get into in a second. 4 straight games with 8 strikeouts or more. So he's pitching almost as well as you'd expect from Cole. So I think those 2 elite level starters should keep even offenses this good under 9 here.
Eric, we're going to the hot corner, third base. Favorite player prop on this 15-game slate?
Yeah, I just alluded to it, but it's Nathan Eovaldi's strikeouts. It's set at 6.5, and he's hit that in 6 straight starts, with the last 4 of those hitting it easily with at least 8 strikeouts. Over that 6-start stretch, he's striking out 1/3 of the opposing batters he's faced while walking his usual just 4.2%. The Yankees have a good offense, but they don't actually make a lot of contact. 6th highest strikeout rate on the season, and that's with having Joey Gallo on the team for only about half of that. So it's an offense that whiffs a ton against a guy who's whiffing as much as he ever does. I don't think 6.5 is at all high enough here.
What about you, Paul?
I have a trio of those strikeout props, and I love the call on Eovaldi. I think both guys go over that. Garrett Cole as well is striking out the world this season, so they'll trust these starters to go deep in a very critical game for both sides, and I think they'll both top the marks that are set aside for them at 6.5 and 7.5 respectively for nice payoffs. I'll also take the strikeout prop on Barrios, which is set at 5.5. He's gone over that mark in 5 of his last 6 starts, pitching is the best he has since arriving in Toronto, and that'll pay off at a minus 1.05 as well. And finally, I also like the strikeout prop for Frankie Montas. It's set at 6.5 tonight as he faces the Houston club that has the fewest strikeouts in the majors this season. I think Montas and the A's must be feeling quite dejected after being swept by the Mariners and likely swept out of the playoff hunt this season. I'm going to take the underside on that prop.
All right, home, take us there. Favorite DK odds boost available for tonight. Paul, what do you got?
We got a hammer on the Boston Yankees game, don't we? It's the game of the night, and I note that despite both pitchers doing a nice job limiting damage from the long ball, I like the DK boost prop here that looks for one of JD Martinez or Aaron Judge to go yard for that plus 215 payoff. They both have homers in their respective histories against tonight's starting pitchers, and I know I said I don't expect a lot of scoring, but one big swing could be the difference in my expected pitchers duel. Clearly, they are both very capable in the bandbox known as Fenway Park.
Eric, bring us home.
Yeah, I think I'm on the Adam Duvall to homer one here, pretty much by default. I usually like most of the odds boosts, but I'm pretty scared of the other two. Just the pitchers are too good in that Yankees-Red Sox game, and then Dylan Cease to record a win when he's facing against Shane Bieber, who I know is just coming back from a long absence, but even 75 pitches of Shane Bieber is tough to get a win against. So I think Adam Duvall at a plus 400 to homer. Plus 400 means if he homers 20% of the time, that's break even. Over his last 24 games, he's homered 10 times, so that's 42% of the time. So he's homering almost twice as often as he needs to get this to work. It's not a homer-friendly park in San Diego, but it looks like it might be a bullpen game for the Padres, which I think cancels that out enough to make this an interesting play.
All right, gentlemen, appreciate it. We could not do this without you. Thanks, everyone, for watching. And if you have more baseball questions, talking DFS, talking bets, make sure you tune in on YouTube, on Twitter, on the DraftKings Twitch pages, because we have a 5 o'clock edition of the slate, MLB, with Adam Kaufman, Matt LaMarca, and Steve Buchanan. We got some Madden games here kicking off at high noon, also over on YouTube and Twitch. Appreciate you watching today, guys. Have a great weekend. We'll see you on Sunday.